Welcome, welcome, welcome. And for those of you all who are new to my channel, my name is Michelle, aka the Ignited Teacher. And what I do on my channel is I provide math teachers like yourself with evidence based and research based strategies that can be used in your classroom as early as the next day. These strategies are intervention strategies. They can be used for tier one instruction, also include um, classroom management. Lost my train of thought right there. And I also include technology integration along with my project-based learning. It's a modified version of the gold standard project-based learning for students from underserved communities. And if you are new here, drop your name in the chat. And if you are not so new here, thank you for being a part of my community. Tell me where you're watching from today, and thank you for being a part of my community. Today's topic is a great topic. But before we jump into talking about how to set up your math intervention binder, I want you to be aware of some of the free resources that I offer to get you started with math intervention and closing learning gaps. This is my blog, and like I said, I talk about different things on my YouTube channel and my social media channel. It's always one of these five topics: project-based learning, math instruction, because good instruction begins with that good core tier one instruction, project-based learning, classroom management, response to intervention, technology integration. And if you do not know where this website is, it is at fuelgreatminds.com. Fuel like putting fuel into your gas tank, greatminds.com. And you can hop over there. I have over 200 blog posts on the website, and I'm adding them twice monthly. Um, Take a look at what I have to offer along with some of the lesson plans and things that I offer there. But again, thank you for being a part of my community. And hopefully, if you have any topics that you would like to have covered or think would be a good addition to my topics that I have covered so far, please let me know. Send me a message or leave it in the comment section, and I'll definitely respond as soon as possible. So today's topic is setting all about setting up your math intervention binder. That's this binder right here, and it's in my face. So that's this binder. And people, you might say, well, why do you have such a large binder? Because math intervention, it takes a lot. People tend to think, and well, not even people, I'm going to say teachers and principals, administrators, they think, oh, because I'm in small group, I'm doing intervention. Intervention is the most difficult part of teaching. When I say difficult, meaning that it takes a lot of tracking and seeing if those strategies that you're implementing are moving the needle. Now, I know we're in the day and age of this map testing. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Map testing and your standardized test that you take at the end of the school year, 9 times out of 10, they are not going to align. Map testing is a norm reference test, and it's very easy. And it's not tied to any curriculum. I can't say that enough, because a lot of people like my map testing. Well, it's not going to align, especially for those of you all who are watching in the state of Texas. Map testing does not align with STAR testing. And I can make the assumption that it's not going to align to any other test because they are two different tests. A criteria reference test, that's criterion reference test, is your test that is tied to your curriculum. And you can use that data to move the needle for math intervention. Some of you may be asking, well, what do you use? I don't use standardized tests. I do use that to practice, but I do not use map testing or any other type of test to move my data. It is a check to see if my strategies work. Now, I don't know how often you all test your children. I know for me, I'm used to giving a mock test in December for our standardized test, and I'm accustomed to having another one done in February sometime to see if those things that the students were struggling with in December were addressed. And generally, I'm on target a lot with that. Sometimes not, but most of the time I have cleared it up because you have to address the data. And that's what this is about. It's about addressing your data and keeping a record of what you're doing, because if you have a binder with everything that you need, you will not have to reinvent the wheel every year. And I'm telling you what I know, not what someone told me, because I have taken what I was taught and they're not teaching it anymore. This is my 25th year in education, and it's not being taught how to intervene with students in a classroom. It's not. That is something that I was taught as a fifth year teacher, more likely a third year teacher, how to implement response to intervention. And I know we have these multi-tiered systems. You know, everything in education is circular. It comes back around with a different name. But you have to track your data. And the way that you track it is with qualitative data, which is the what, and quantitative data, which is the how or why. Why is that data, those numbers not moving? So when you have the what, why, and how, then you can come together and come up with a plan. I take my what are they struggling with, and I look at the why, and then the how is the intervention plan that you're going to use to address the what and the why. Sometimes it's difficult to address the what and why, and I'm going to talk about that here shortly. So hopefully this is my little joy emoji. This is something that you can really resonates with you. And I'm going to jump over into why do you need a binder? And you're probably saying, I don't need a binder. I have my little checklist. Well, you do need a binder. And I'm telling you that because, first of all, it's your documentation. I was accused of not having intervention, but that couldn't be because, first of all, I track my data. I track my data. That's my phone. It always does that. And I thought I turned it off. Guess I didn't. I track my data and it's on my wall because my students, they know where the numbers are. And if you have been on my YouTube channel, I have a video that talks about my data wall, actually creating a data wall that the children actually use. So that's on my YouTube channel. But I was accused, but I keep a binder. See? It's a 2-inch binder, nothing special. I created this. I created this, if you can see it. Let me see. And it goes along with the theme of my math intervention guide, implementation guide. So it's a binder, nothing special, but we're going to talk about the contents of this binder. So let me move my stuff over. You're going to see my floor. That's some stuff. All right. So let me see if I can move this over. There we go. So this is my binder. Like I said, this theme goes along with my math implementation guide. Intervention is an emergency. That's why I use the medical theme. And not that we put band-aids on it, but we heal the parts of what the students need by closing the gap. So that's what the band-aid represent. And this is your data, because the data doesn't always stay up. Sometimes it is hard to close gaps. One of the things that I do know, the older the children get, the larger the gaps. But on the flip side of that, it's easier to close gaps with older children than it is with younger children. Why? Maybe because of maturity and immaturity. And I just felt like when I worked at the high school, there were a lot of students who had an idea of how things were supposed to work. And once they got the plug, they moved very quickly. So, looking at the inside of my binder, now my binder has a lot of notes. This is some science stuff that I had in here. Let me turn this around. This is the preliminary start data. Now, this is authentic because I wanted you all to see exactly what I have in here. So this is authentic. See, I dropped coffee on it because I constantly use this. So I taught third grade. This is my blueprint from the state of Texas. See, that is my blueprint. And it gives me all of the reporting categories. Why is this in here? Because I need to know how many questions are there going to be for each category. Now, I teach and try to make sure that I'm done teaching by spring break. In Texas, spring break is in March. It's the second week of March. I try to make sure that I'm finished. So all of these things have to be done by March. And when you look here, you have reporting category, which has the least amount of number of questions. So generally, these data analysis and financial literacy, it's like 3 questions. I've never seen 5, but it could be. So it just depends on years. If you're in Texas, you can go to Lead Forward, and it gives you the years and how many questions were per year. If it's been 3 years and they've only given 3 questions, generally it will stay the same. So let's look here. The largest reporting category is reporting category 2, computations and algebraic reasoning. That is fractions. That is multiplication and division for third grade. And it's by far the hardest because it has a lot of pattern work in here. But if you look here, it has 11 to 13 questions. But a lot of these questions are going to be some of them are these 1 point question, multiple choice, and non-multiple choice items, and 2 point questions. So they can be in there. The smallest category, which is reporting category 1, 7 to 9, but numerical representations and relationships, is going to be a strand, and I tell this used to be number and operations. It's going to be spiraled through all of your other strands. And that's what happens in middle school and high school. That number and operation category, as the children move through the vertical alignment of the curriculum for math, they no longer will test them, but they will include them in other categories. So one of the changes for the STAR is that a lot of times they don't do 2 years. They're expecting the kids to master a lot of skills in 1 year. That's why you need to practice, practice, practice. I generally, multiplication and division, that's a year-long process, especially for third grade, because it's an introduction into multiplication and division. So, moving on. This is also something I have in here. Remember, I was talking about the question items. So, Leap Forward does a very good job of giving us the years. So, they talk about rounding of whole numbers. In third grade, as you can see here, it says NT not tested. So if you are in Texas, this is a great thing to have in your binder as well, because it tells you what was not tested. So representation of fractions was not tested in 2023. Then it says unit fractions. It wasn't tested in 2023. But we teach unit fractions, or at least you're supposed to teach unit fractions anyway. As you can see, as we move down through multiplication and division, it has been tested every year. Only division of numbers was not tested in 2021, nor was it tested in 2018. So those are things that you need to look at and know your standardized test. So the next thing I have in here is a tier 2 long range plan. And these are blank ones, so I'm going to try to find one that I filled out. This is one that I filled out, and I sell this in my anecdotal notes. It's a product on my website. I actually put the dates on my tier 2 long range planning. I do, because I need to know how long I'm going to teach this. Now, tier 2, I have a tier 1 and a tier 2, because my higher level kids, and if you don't have any, you'll just have a tier 2 intervention plan. But I had some kids that were above grade level. So what I did is I was moving them along. So if you look here, this was my tier one on grade level, but I had three groups of students that were above grade level. So notice the difference. Compose and decompose numbers, but for my tier 1 above grade level, I had already moved them on to equivalent fractions. And I move them along because they grasp concepts very quickly. I did this during small groups. Then I had my tier 3 kids, which were above grade level. They also went to another teacher for tier 3, but I still service them in my groups. So that was comparing order numbers. So that's a way for you all to understand what a long range plan. If you plan it at the beginning, you won't have to revisit it. You already know what you're going to teach, and this is taught through the vertical alignment. Now, you're probably going to ask about the dates. These dates coincide with our grading report. If you're on 9 weeks, then your intervention is going to be for 9 weeks. That is how I do it, because it's easier. It's easier, and I can go along with the grading cycle and see how the kids are moving. Now, what's different is in my data, moving on to data, this is another thing that you should have in your binder: progress monitoring. Now, baseline data is the beginning of the year. That's where they started on MAP. I don't just take one data point. We took the interim star, and I actually put all their data in here so that I can see, because these are not aligned. This is not aligned to this. Because look at the star interim. It goes did not meet masters, all of that. So this is map data. You may use a different type of data. We used to use Renaissance, which was a whole lot better because it was aligned to star. It really was. And I'm going to show you that data in here. Let me see. I had it earlier. I'm going to show you. It was a lot better than map data. Map is just skills, and it just doesn't give me what I need for my students. Let me see. It's in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So this was my screening report for Renaissance. I like Renaissance because it aligned with the STAR testing. See, it says meets, but we don't have it anymore. So, I mean, I've taught several grade levels, but it just helped with me not having to go back and look and use my own knowledge base. It just gave me that in the report. So this also is a template that's a part of one of my products that you can purchase. But the progress monitoring, I put all their data when they're on there. So if I need another one, I create another sheet for them. Now, we've done two tabs. So there's the planning tab, there's the data tab, and then there's school-wide intervention. Now, we had a school-wide intervention, which was from 8:05 to 8:25. So those were different things that I worked on. Now, you're probably saying, well, that's a lot. Well, it just depends on what your school has in place. You also need to have documentation for that as well. It needs to be documentation. So during the school while we were working on elapsed time. Now, if you're saying, well, that's a lot to work on, the kids they can do it. You can review multiple things, and it knocks the monotony out of the day. So during school-wide intervention, we had things that we were working on. And then I also, as it got closer to STAR, I started changing some of my groups. Like for students, after December, when I got their scores back, I created STAR intervention groups during this time, which is perfect because what it told me is that those students started to move. Now, this was another section for school-wide. So it's planning, data, and then I had school-wide intervention. And the next tabs I had were my tabs for my classes. So if you teach classes that are, if you're departmentalized, you can go ahead and use that. So this was my group anecdotal notes. And as you can see, for school-wide intervention, I had group 2. So comparing fractions, I always put the teak. So if someone asks me what date, and sometimes I'm not good at putting the time because you know with everything school is fluid and it doesn't take the same time. But sometimes like if I know I need to document what time we had this, I will put that there. So it's a skill or concept, student progress, and then I would do my notes. So here are some notes. But I definitely, this was for my tier 2 students. And I may go back and now that I'm looking at this, add what group it is. Cause this was my tier 2 group. They were right underneath grade level. And I only put 6 here because 6 is enough. For me, that's all I can handle is 6 children in a group at a time. I think one time I had 7, but that was in my above grade level group. So that is what I have in my binder. One of the other things that I have in here, which I forgot to mention, is my lead forward snapshot. And you're probably asking, what is that? That is like, this is for science. This is all the standards that have to be taught for 3rd grade. And then I had my math field guide. And you're probably saying, well, what is a field guide? A field guide tells you, and I've written in this, it's a guide. So it has the vertical alignment in it, as you can see. Move that out the way. So this would, I call this my extension because this is where they're going, and this is intervention piece. So if you're familiar with Lead Forward, and this is for the state of Texas, I don't know if they have it in other states. The intervention piece is the part that they're supposed to come with, which is inhibiting them from getting on grade level. So this was done in intervention. This is your tier 1 instruction. I think after like 6 weeks, you should really know who's gonna do what. I generally had like maybe 50 to 60% of my students who would master the tier 1 instruction. And I just knew who they were, and I anticipated this being an issue. And a lot of times in my tier 1 instruction, the kids, I'm trying to minimize the kids going to intervention. So I would front load a lot of my lessons with some of these skills to help the kids make the jump. If they couldn't make the jump, then I knew that they were tier 2 kids. Also, let's see what else I have in here. This was the math teaks tree. So I could just see, this is also from Lead Forward. So I could see how the standards or student expectations were connected. And it's just a guide for me. It's whatever you need in your binder to keep your intervention on point. I don't like flipping back and looking for things. So I keep this in here. And that is the end of that. That's the last thing I had in there. So this is my math intervention binder. So hopefully it gives you some tips about what you need. If you're interested in any of those templates that you saw, I'm going to put a link in the comment section so that you can, you know, explore using those templates if you need them. So I hope that this was amazing for you and that it didn't blow your mind too much. I will be offering a getting started with math intervention. workshop, so be on the lookout for that. But the components that you actually need in a binder, you need your data, you need your standards, expectations, anything for testing, because that's what you're basically prepping the kids for, to finish, to close those gaps and make sure that you're on point. You need a long range plan. How are you going to address these issues? Because data is ongoing. Your formative assessments, like the check for understanding, should guide your tier 2 instruction and who is going to be in. But if you don't have a sound tier 1 instruction, it's going to be difficult. You should also have any school-wide intervention. Though, don't leave those up to chance. Those groups should be intentional and they're fluid. They do not stay the same. If you find kids that are staying in your groups, then there is an issue with your intervention. Those students should be moving on, and I move my students accordingly. I've had kids that moved out of group 2 into group 1. I've had to move kids down. It just depends on how they are moving through the curriculum. The last thing is you have your groups for your classes. Those are ongoing anecdotal notes. I did small group twice a week because I was departmentalized, which helps me to maintain my schedule as far as curriculum. Just like I said, I try to be finished with teaching my curriculum by spring break, which is the second week of March, so that I can review and make sure that my students are sound before testing in May. So that's pretty much it. But before I go and close this out, I want you all to check out my math intervention implementation guide. Now, as you can see, my binder cover matches the theme of this implementation guide. It is a guide that takes you through the process of intervention, which is assess, diagnose, reteach, and reassess. It's only 4 steps in intervention for me. I assess, diagnose, reteach, reassess. That is it. So that progress monitoring piece, and I didn't go into heavily with that, but that's something that needs to be in your binder as a part of your data. But I do go into depth with that here on how to progress monitor your kids. Also, you get the templates. I put some data in there for you. And these are just some testimonials that teachers have who have used it. So I hope that you enjoyed today's topic, and thank you for chiming in. If you are watching this on a replay, definitely drop me a comment in the comment section, and I'll see you all in my next live stream. Bye-bye.